The internet is so toxic. We should all spend less time on social media. The screen time of the kids these days is really worrying. I don't f***ing believe that, and here's the reason why. Okay, here's the thing about complaining. I love it. I am not saying under any circumstances do not complain. The world is only anyway halfway decent because people complain. Extreme complaining can be called protesting, and I am for that. In fact, it's probably the only way we're going to survive. So I'm not saying don't complain. But when it comes to the internet, I'd like to talk about how to complain better. I'm one of those people that didn't grow up with the internet. Not really. I think I got a Facebook account when I was about 16, but I didn't get my own computer till I was 19. And before that I had like kind of limited access to the internet. I really learned about world history on Encarta. So I do remember a world without the internet, okay? At least in some capacity. So I feel like my bias isn't there when it comes to people who have always had the internet or always had social media and just can't imagine a world without it. I can, and if I had to give it a TripAdvisor review, I'd go shit out of 10. I am, however, somebody who has met almost all of the most important people in my life on the internet, and I now make money on the internet. That is my job. Hi. Now I'm in my 30s and time feels like it's running out, frankly. I only really have time for complaints about the internet that are paragraphs. Miss me with the sentences. Examples of such sentences. The internet is so toxic. We should all spend less time on social media. The screen time of the kids these days is really worrying. Paragraphs only. The name of my biography. When it comes to wanting to slag off the internet and social media in general, and do you know what, it is toxic, it is, but I'll tell you the reasons why. It's not the reasons that columnists in the Telegraph or mums on Twitter, or frankly what we've all kind of been parroting as this world gets more and more publicly volatile and strange. To be honest, I feel like I've parroted a lot of those phrases in the past, and I have just more and more been chewing on it and thinking, I don't fucking believe that, and here's the reason why. Moral panic is a social phenomena that's been documented a lot. People have had it about everything. About carriages, about typewriters, about stranger danger, about various types of drugs that aren't actually that worrying, about people who look different moving into their neighbourhoods. Moral panic usually starts with a real concern, but isn't rooted in research, experience, or fact. Here are some examples of people getting moral panic about social media and the internet. Mainly that any of their panics are new, because I think that's something that really does get people's blood pumping, get clicks, get attention, evokes feelings that might not always be real, is the idea that there's a new threat in town. Something we've never experienced before, don't have any history or data on how to tackle, and frankly, because it's so new, it might be the end of us all. Up to and including, but not exhaustive, a list of things that aren't the internet's invention or fault and won't go away should we take away the internet or social media. Adverts and the attention economy. Adverts have been part of a lot of societies. Sorry, I'm giggling because it feels obvious. Since the dawn of time. Well, okay, and since people started swapping things for shells and hoarding those things to buy things that aren't immediate needs. Billboards, magazines, our societies have been full of adverts for a long time. Maybe not to the same extent, but if you're a person who grew up really wanting a pair of the ugliest shoes alive because Britney Spears was wearing them, those Skechers, and now you've grown up to have style and you're like, why did I want those? You'll know the power of advertising and how it's always really been a thing. There is a debate to be had as to whether tailored adverts are more damaging than general adverts, but I'd say it creates a less homogenous society in some ways, and that's definitely still up for debate. But the internet didn't invent consumerism in the way that people seem to present it. Mob mentality, another thing that has been well documented in history. Thankfully in the UK we no longer stone people alive in town squares, but in the great span of history, it actually wasn't that long ago. Ostracizing people for literally no reason is a problem with human psychology that has a really long tailbone. And yeah, I would like to solve it, and I don't have the data to say whether it's getting better or worse. I'd say we're seeing it more, it's more visible now. But to say that people on the internet are toxic just speaks volumes to me about how you've never been to a parish town hall meeting.
You have no authority here, Jackie Weaver. No authority at all.
She's just kicked him out.
This is what you look like to me right now. Flex culture, lest we go into an hour-long essay about the history of that. I don't think status and class intersecting and causing harmful atmospheres in communities is a new thing. Oh my god, I've realised why I recognise myself here. This is the angle that I took every single MySpace selfie at when I was like 17. We don't know the way that people are using social media, and yet there are lots of problems with comparison. Again, not new. But there's also loads of ways that we've used social media just to connect with people, to hang out with our friends. You didn't hear other cultures complaining about people socialising too much, did you? Or maybe you did. Jane, come down those stairs immediately. We need to find you a husband. Stop rambling on in endless letters to your friends that will one day be compounded into an anthology and sold at Waterstones for $12.99. God, Churchill wrote a lot of letters and you have to pay a lot of money to read them now. Being obsessed with past loves. The Social Dilemma is an awful documentary on Netflix that everybody was talking about, and I'm sure did more harm than good to the boomers panicking about the internet. But there's this scene in it where this boy like tears his hair out because he's so obsessed with watching his ex-girlfriend, or the girl who turned him down on social media, and it's this really serious scene with loads of overtured music. And I'm like, anyone who is worried about social media making men disproportionately obsessed with the women they love has not ever read any poem by a man written from before 1950 and a bit after till the beginning of time. Jeez. And the last one is a lack of productive time, and this is the one that I want to delve into a little bit, if you will humour me, because do we know what people did with their time before the internet? Do we have those stats? Was it all perfectly productive time? Did nobody waste time before 1991? Let's talk about it. I saw this graph on another YouTuber's channel that at first really intrigued and excited me, until I realised that he hadn't done any references and I can't find any evidence that this graph ever existed on the internet. But it did get me thinking, and I found a verifiable graph like this, which shows that while I feel like a lot of the conversations around the internet make it out like we're spending like twice as much time on screens or 3 times as much time on screens, that's not really true. The generations before us just watched a butt ton of TV and really liked to put their nose in physical newspapers, which isn't a bad thing, but the panic of us interacting with media only seems to happen when it's done in the correct way. Correct in the biggest fuck off quotation marks ever. This is the medieval knife challenge I've got to get through. Watch. Now, one of the panics about us spending so much time online is this argument that it's like, well, you could be doing something else. What could you do with 20 hours a month? Well, I could have joined an MLM and started a side hustle, or learned how to make overpriced property and sell it to other people on Etsy. None of those things are bad, apart from the MLM. But I don't really believe that time that we're spending on screens, which again, I object to my screen time because I wrote a lot of the book that I was trying to write on a screen, on my phone specifically. I connect with friends and have really deep conversations during my screen time. I listen to podcasts, I watch YouTube videos of varying qualities. But it's not all, to me, none of that time is wasted or intellectually dead time, apart from when I'm in a scroll hole, but that's usually because something else is going on, which leads to my other point. Why are we spending so much time on screens? If some of that screen time is toxic and is like sucking our time and making us depressed and anxious, it's never about the addiction. We know that from addiction theory. It's about what we're trying to escape. I wonder what we could be trying to escape. A life lived not paid properly for the wealth we create, whilst experiencing the constant threat of bankruptcy in a world that is slowly burning. Nah, that can't be it. Nah. Must just be lazy, boring people. Why don't we want to be alone with our own thoughts? Maybe because our own thoughts are troubling. And we as a society should be working on those thoughts and where they're coming from, and also getting to the root of why people want to escape onto social media. I don't know if we can use all the time that we use when we're actually staring at screens. I don't know if that time is monetizable. I'm sorry. It's actually when everybody's mostly exhausted. I also feel like the numbers are kind of falsely reported because they also talk about like the amount of pickups you do per day. And I don't know about you, but I don't pick up my phone in a moment where I could be writing a sonnet. It's usually 30 seconds while I'm on the loo. And yeah, I could be staring into space and maybe that would be better for my brain, and I do try to do that more. But surely that's about learning social media literacy and what you need as a person, not about the social media or the internet itself. So to end the sermon, tripped on a branch, I'm fine. Nobody saw, right? So to end the sermon, I would like to talk about some things that I genuinely think we should be panicking about when it comes to social media and the internet. Things that you should include in your paragraph paragraph when you complain about social media, because no more sentences for you. No, my friend. It is way more complicated than that. Ad blocker. Most journalists and creatives and lots of other kinds of people work for free on spec. A bit like me. Really, and a lot of that income is stifled because people use ad blocker. Now, I don't blame people for using ad blocker. Previous broke student ad blocker user in the house, but having stuff like, I don't know, universal basic income would mean that people would feel like they wouldn't have to put so many ads on videos. Widespread awareness about why it's cool to pay platforms to not have ads, like YouTube Premium and stuff like that. Means tested ads, the right to not see ads if you don't have the money to pay to not see them. Means testing that like every other essential thing would be cool, so that we make sure we're not punishing the poor and making them pay for stuff with ads when it could be potentially detrimental to their mental health if they don't want to see them. The option to choose which ads you see as a viewer, so that I will have to sit through those fucking Noom ads ever again. The weight loss ones can get fucked. Rules against underage ads. Shouldn't show adverts to people underage. Just my opinion, definitely should be in the law. Legislation around designing on purpose systems that are addictive. I found an article where this expert was talking about the percentage of people who are actually addicted to being online is probably in line with the proportions of the population who are addicted to anything else, like alcohol or gambling. He thinks the tech companies should notify users that they're in the top percentages of users and offer them resources such as software tools and professional assistance. That's a quote from an article I'll leave below. But like, yeah, that makes more sense than just telling everybody to stop using the internet. Let's get better at using the internet. Let's make sure people can't harm other people on the internet. Come on, lads, we've been to the moon. I'm looking at you, Jeff.
Come on, Jeff.
Proper consequences for people sending actual death threats on the internet. Banning them from the internet, or encouraging people to get off the internet or stop using it if they're being abused. The people who are committing verbal hate crimes on the internet, they're not going to stop committing hate crimes just because they can't do it on the internet. Those people are out there, and actually the internet's a great way to track those people down, stop them in their tracks, re-educate them, sort them out. Making sure there are therapists that are trained in cancel culture and other kind of toxic behaviours online. Lindsay Ellis said in her interview on A Financial Diet that one of the reasons she didn't seek therapy after she was abused on the internet is because she couldn't find a therapist that actually understood what she was going on about. Which is wild to me. Here endeth the rant. I think if you throw out the bathwater of social media and the internet, you're throwing out a really nice baby. If you want to stop using social media altogether, or you want to back away from the internet more, I completely support you. I understand why you would, trust me. But I don't think the answer is this whisper around that the internet is completely toxic and bad and it's a new thing that we should stay away from and go back to olden times where everybody was kind and just, because that is frankly ridiculous. Let me know in the comments something that you wish somebody would complain about in paragraphs and not just sentences. Thank you so much for watching. Frogslog out.